Am I the a-hole for refusing to pay a neighborhood kid for cutting my lawn when I didn't ask him to? I 29 am recently bought my first house. I'm settling in and like the neighborhood, and a few neighbors even came by to say hello. They included a woman 43F and her 13-year-old son. Not long after, I was on my couch one afternoon and saw the son outside, mowing my front lawn. I was confused, since I'd never asked him to and he'd never offered. I went out and politely asked him why he was doing it. He said he did it for lots of neighbors, and quickly added they give him $5 for it. I found it really weird, so thanked him for the partial work he'd done, before explaining that since I hadn't asked or wanted him to do it, I wasn't going to be paying him. He said okay, and quietly left my lawn. I figured that might be the end of it. Just a kid trying to make some money, resolved with no harm done. End of story. But the next day his mom arrived on my doorstep and angrily asked me why I hadn't paid her son. I basically repeated what I'd said to her son, but she wouldn't accept it. She just kept saying that it was a kind gesture, and that he does it for all the other neighbors. She also said $5 isn't a lot of money and I could have just given it to him. I kept trying to explain that an agreement like that needs to be set up ahead of time, otherwise it's nothing more than a random demand for money. But she basically turned me out and ended up walking away as I was talking. I was amazed the adult in the situation was handling it worse than the literal child was. I'm wondering how much longer this will go on for. That was last week. Every time I've seen her since, she's stared daggers at me or made a show of crossing the street to avoid me. I'm not instigating anything further. I really have no desire to speak to her, but I'm thinking she might try to send her poor kid back to collect the money or even mow the lawn again. I've vented about this to family and friends, and while most seemed to agree with me, some said I should have been grateful and paid the boy and just told them from then on not to mow the lawn. I can't tell if I'd been an here or if my reaction to the whole thing was entirely justified. So am I the a-hole here?
Here are the top comments, plus Opie's reply.
Not the a-hole. I kind of feel bad for that kid, because it sounds like his mom is teaching him that he can get stuff for completely unsolicited help.
OP replied,
I feel bad for him too. He seems like a nice kid. His mom's behavior is what I take issue with.
Not the a-hole. There needs to be communication before the kid does this sort of thing. And you stopped him once you noticed what was happening. You didn't wait for him to finish and then question him. You weren't trying to get free work. What do the neighbors say or think? Maybe try to talk with them and get their input. They've been there longer. They all may be fed up with that family also.
Not the a-hole. If he wants to make money, he needs to ask first. And make sure that you're willing to hire him. Just diving in and sticking his hand out afterwards is a polite shakedown. And of course, this doesn't take into account potential damage to your yard, because without talking to you first, he has no idea what you might have going on.
Asking for money for services that weren't requested, after the fact, is not a kind gesture. It's a trap. Not the a-hole.